Half the time, they're riding a board that's too small. As the impeller sits idle and never gets used, they get dry rotted.
Welcome to the Portside Podcast. I'm here with Hez White, actually cousin to Shaun White, right?
Back when I had my long hair, he copied me, though.
Oh, he copied you?
Yeah.
You came first?
Yep.
When were you born?
95.
95. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, he's not cool enough to be his cousin, but it's okay. We still work with him anyway. All right, so I'm going to kind of hit him with like a ton of kind of questions, random ones. We're going to see where this ends up. So be prepared. But I guess, can you tell me the craziest story, one hopefully legal, craziest story that you ever heard or been involved in when it comes down to boating?
Yeah, I've got a few crazy ones. Two that come to mind right away. Way back in the day, before I was ever around, Bayliner released this little boat called a Bayliner Jazz, and it was a little jet foot boat. I mean, probably 17-footer.
Yeah.
And they claimed that it was unflippable. So
Okay.
My parents they would take a Lake Powell trip once a season, and they'd go down there with all their buddies, and they spent the whole week trying to flip this Bayliner Jazz. And after failed attempt after failed attempt after failed attempt, my dad put one of his buddies, who was a real big boy, I mean, probably about 400 pounds on one side, and he said they had to do like a 30 roll into the side that his buddy was on, and that was the only way. And it did. It went and it flipped, and
Did it sink?
No, it didn't sink.
No,
just flipped it, and yeah, they got pictures of all of them sitting on top of the boat upside down. You know, they were all stuck. They finally got it flipped over. Yep. So,
can you give me a little bit of background? Did you grow up with boats? What's the stitch?
I did, yeah. So my family, my grandma and grandpa actually started in a marina in Wyoming. They bought Glendale Marina in the early 70s. And so my dad and my uncle grew up with my grandpa selling boats out of there and running the marina. And they did that all through my dad's younger childhood, and then opened up another dealership in Casper, Wyoming in the late 80s, I think 86 or 88, somewhere in there.
How old were you when you actually started working for the...
When I started working full-time, I was 16, but I mean, I grew up in the dealership in the summertime. It was, instead of going to daycare, I was at the shop cleaning boats or... vacuuming floors, mopping floors, doing whatever. And I probably started that around 12.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's literally been my whole life.
Dang. What kind of tasks did they have you doing at like 12 years old?
At 12, it was actually, I mean, I would drive, down here we have forklifts to move all our boats around. But back there we had John Deere tractors. And instead of like a bucket on the back or the front, we just swapped it out and welded on a hitch mechanism. So you would just run it like a bucket to pick the nose of the boat up. But yeah, we were driving around big John Deere tractors to move everything around.
It does not sound like a great idea. That's crazy.
No, it worked actually really, really well.
Okay, gotcha. I'm sure since you've grown up on a boat, your family's grown up with boats, there's probably a more like efficient way to do things. What are some tips I could do there? Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the way it always was for us, like everybody had a designated job when you were done, or even, if you're pulling up to the gas dock to get fuel. Everybody had a task or a job that they were supposed to accomplish. So, for instance, like if we were done for the day and we were coming into our dock, we had a roof on our dock, basically. And when we built it before boats had wakeboard racks.
Yeah.
So it was narrow. And so you had to remember, once we got wakeboard racks, you had to remember to be able to fold them in. So like as we would come in, somebody had a job to put the wakeboard racks in. And then once we were on, somebody would grab a towel and start wiping the boat down. Somebody's unloading boards and jackets and everything out of the boat to get them hung up, and you don't leave the boat a mess or leave wet jackets and stuff laying inside to get moldy and nasty. And then same thing goes for like the gas dock. You designate people with specific jobs. Get somebody in the bow and someone in the back to help catch you on the dock when you come in, and they tie it up, and then somebody gets a gas pump or whatever the situation is.
So the same people do the same task every single time, in and out.
Ideally, if you can't, with your family, like I was always when I was younger, I was always the stopper. I'd grab the dock and then I'd tie the boat up. And then, like me and my friends, we were always the ones that were tasked with cleaning the boat. So, if you've got a good-sized family or if you're boating with the same people most of the time, Jimmy does A and Johnny does C and, whatever. It's task somebody before you come in.
Mm. Did you ever have a nice way of asking your buddies for gas money? Not really.
Not really. Just because I mean,
okay.
and really, a lot of people don't understand how much fuel goes into these things. I mean, it's not like your car. It's 30 gallons. Some of these boats have 86-gallon fuel tanks on them.
Yeah.
So if you toss somebody at 20 for a full day's of surfing and wakeboarding, I mean that doesn't cut it. So I always just try and set the standard. I mean, anything is appreciated, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I always say like, minimum of, 50 for sure. But I mean, $100 will go a long ways to put some fuel in somebody's boat.
Okay. That makes sense. Maybe second to last question. What are 3 things that a beginner boater may not, like they're not required to have on their boat, but could be super helpful?
So, and this is actually an interesting one. It's no longer required to have a paddle on board.
Oh, interesting.
Well, and I don't know if that's nationwide.
Okay.
But for sure, Colorado and Wyoming, it's no longer legal.
Okay, hold on. If you're on a wake boat like this, would a paddle do anything?
Well, it's better than tying a rope to the front and swimming the thing home. Yeah. I mean,
one paddle though. I feel like one paddle wouldn't do a thing.
No, but you used to have one minimum.
Okay.
So, get somebody in the front. Get a couple people off the back kicking.
But, got it.
But yeah,
okay.
I mean, that's something. Probably 2 is more ideal for sure. Getting one person on each side.
I would love to make a video of you just trying to row this boat in with one paddle.
I would
love to see that. Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I've had to swim one before because we didn't have one, and we lost power, and we were way deep in the canyon, and there was nobody. I mean, we had floated as long as we could to where we couldn't float anymore, so we hooked ropes up to the front, and 3 of us took turns swimming that thing. It was about an hour and a half before somebody ended up coming through and giving us a tow, but
that sucks.
It was miserable. Yeah.
One at a time, just one of you in the front, like not
yeah,
3.
Yeah, because I mean, we were towing such a big boat. Put a life jacket on and swim till you got tired and swap to the next guy.
That sucks. Okay.
Yep.
So you don't need to have a paddle, but you suggest having a paddle.
For sure.
And honestly, with a boat this size, you'd probably want 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean, minimum 2. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Noted. What's the 2 other things that you would suggest?
I don't know. I mean, dumb things come to mind for like always have like sunscreen,
yeah.
And it's just because, I mean, I'm sunburned as can be right now. It's, sometimes you just forget to bring it with you. Mm-hmm. But if you've got a little, carrier case or a bin on there that's got a few extra sunscreens, you just leave it on the boat all the time.
Yeah.
It's always handy, and you're always swimming, so you always need to reapply. So something like that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, past that, I mean, a hat. One of those big sun hats. I always try and leave one on the boat, because as you're out there all day, you've got shade, you got the bimini, but that sun's draining, especially up here at our elevation where I mean, the air gets so thin, it gets hot. Okay,
that makes sense. And then I guess last question, because you're the pro shop expert, boards, vests, all that fun stuff. I actually, when I started working at Roma with you, I kind of expected maybe there was some like sales tactics or some sort of like gotcha moment, but there really isn't one. Just like general industry wide. Is there anything with like pro shop gear where you're like, they will charge you a ton for this, or they might tell you this, but you don't really need this, like anything like that?
Not really as far as like that goes. I mean, especially with the internet anymore these days, you know what I mean? Like the days of having a 4-year-old wakeboard and you're still trying to sell it for MSRP.
That's
I mean, those are
over.
pretty over, I
Yeah.
mean, you can get on Amazon and find one for half the price right now, it's especially for the carryover type stuff. But I guess the thing that I would mostly like want to caution people on is like, especially if you're dealing with somebody who hasn't been in the industry as long, or if they just don't have the knowledge yet, like
Okay.
with water sports in particular, everything is all weight based. So especially when it comes to boards and everything. So, I mean, you could ride a board that's 6 inches long as it was 4 feet thick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's all about buoyancy. So half of the battle that I find with people that are struggling to figure out wake surfing or wakeboarding or anything like that, if they have a video and they show me a video, half the time they're riding a board that's too small. And so they're sinking in the wave, and they don't have the flotation on the board to keep them up on top of the water to help them find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And as soon as you put them on the right size board, their whole world changes, and they can finally figure out where they need to be to throw the rope, and then they can start progressing their riding, and they're not getting frustrated just trying to figure out how to even just throw the rope in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because, I mean, I also find that, like, a lot of times, I think we even did it to you. It was me and my brother. Well, I don't know. I don't want to insult him by giving him the wrong height, but he's quite a bit taller than I am, buffer than I am. And, we're hoping that we could just get one board to share. And then the other day, someone walks in and, the guy is, like, definitely over 6 foot tall, buff. And he's like, my girlfriend's about your size, and we just want the same board. We don't want to buy 2 boards. And I just didn't know what to possibly do with that scenario.
Yeah, so I mean, and I had a very similar situation today that, the family had 5 kids.
Yeah.
2 of them were 190 pounds, and then the other 3 were 90 to 120, somewhere in there. What you would do in that situation, I mean, ideally you sell them at least 2 boards.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's truly what
They need.
they need.
Okay.
But if, I mean, I get it that they're not cheap.
No, they're
Even
not.
my inexpensive boards are not inexpensive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if one board is truly only in the budget, you fit the bigger person. So, I fit the 190-pound kids with a board, and then the smaller kids can ride it. What you run into a lot of times is, especially if they're shorter and they're a lot lighter, and you put them on this really big, long board, then the board rides them more than they ride it.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, they can stand up on it, they can ride, but it's going to want to track straight, or it's going to go where it wants to go, and they're not going to be able to maneuver it around, right? But I get it. I mean, toys are not cheap anymore.
No, they're not. Okay, final question, Hez. Are there any issues that, especially beginner boaters or just boaters in general are going to come across lately that has maybe an easy solution?
Yeah, I think like a common one that comes to mind is like overheating. We see a lot of it sometimes after, or we see a lot of it in the springtime after the boats have been sitting over the winterize.
Yeah.
And there's multiple reasons that could cause it for sure, but most commonly is the impeller going bad in the engine.
Okay.
I mean, the impeller is the lifeline of the engine. That's what spins and sucks the lake water up into the motor to keep everything cool. And it's a wear part. So over time, as it gets use, it gets weak, and they will eventually fail. And then the other cause that we see a lot of times is not using the boat. So as the impeller sits idle and never gets used, they get dry rotted. And then that causes them to get hard and brittle, and then they can break. So, you can see it on a 3-year-old boat that has 300 hours on it that, they never changed it, or I've seen it on 10-year-old boats that have 50 hours on it, and that thing's just been sitting for so long that it just got weak over time.
That makes sense. So the impeller is something that you should change how often?
We always recommend every other year. And
Okay.
I mean, it's just a peace of mind. I
Yeah.
mean, because if you overheat out on the water, it's,
Game over.
I mean, your weekend's done unless you've got a spare.
Okay. That makes sense. And that's something that you could just change on your own fairly easily?
Depends on how mechanically inclined you are. Yeah.
Okay. You're saying how talented you are.
Yeah. And depends on the boat too. You know, depending on what type of motor you have, it's mounted in different areas. Like on stern drive boats, like a Four Winds or Crown Line or you know, something like that. It's actually for most of them, it's actually in the lower unit, which is down in the water. So I mean, you're not changing that on the water. That's got to get back to a trailer at the very least.
That makes sense. All right, well, thanks for joining me today. It was a short and sweet one. Or at least I hope it will be for the rest of you guys. But otherwise, we'll catch you at the next one. And I think we're going to be chatting about some River Fest stuff. I know we had some really cool athletes come in the last 2-3 years, from what I hear. Yeah. With some pretty crazy stories about like injuries and comeback stories and money won. So I think that's the plan.
Yep.
But I'll catch you guys later. Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem.